August 23, 1943. The Sicilian countryside near Troina. Oberreiter Klaus Müller of the 15th Panzer Grenadier Division crouched behind his disabled Panzer IV, sweat mixing with dust on his blackened face as he scribbled frantically in his field notebook. The words he wrote would have been dismissed as Allied propaganda by his superiors, yet they captured a terrifying reality that German tank crews across multiple theaters were beginning to understand. "They keep coming," he wrote, his pencil shaking with exhaustion. "For every Panzer we destroy, 5 more American tanks appear on the horizon. How can any nation produce so many machines while fighting a war across the entire world?" Through the smoke and chaos of the failed German counterattack, Müller had witnessed something that contradicted everything Wehrmacht intelligence had told them about American industrial capacity. Endless columns of Sherman tanks rolled past his position, their crews relaxed, confident, seemingly unconcerned about losses because replacement vehicles would arrive within days. In Germany, each tank lost represented months of irreplaceable production. Each crew member killed took years to replace. Yet here, the Americans operated as if their supply of armor was infinite. 230 German tank crewmen had climbed into their panzers that morning at dawn, veterans of the Africa Corps, men who had driven British forces back to the gates of Alexandria, who had earned their iron crosses in the furnace of desert warfare. By sunset, fewer than 60 would return to their lines, and those survivors would carry with them the first glimpses of an industrial reality that would soon demolish every assumption German leadership held about their enemy's capacity for war production. The mathematics of American victory were being written not in tactical manuals, but in production statistics that revealed an industrial machine so vast it defied German comprehension. The psychological transformation had begun 6 months earlier on the frozen steppes outside Stalingrad, where Oberfeldwebel Friedrich Hartmann first encountered American-built Sherman tanks in Soviet service. The tanks arrived under the Lend-Lease program, bearing Red Army markings, but clearly displaying American engineering and manufacturing quality that exceeded anything the Wehrmacht intelligence services had predicted. Hartmann's diary, recovered from the Stalingrad pocket in February 1943, would provide historians with the earliest documented German recognition of American tank production superiority. "The Ivans have new tanks," Hartmann wrote on January 15, 1943. "Not their crude T-34s, but smooth, well-built machines with American engines. The radio intercepts indicate these are called Sherman tanks. Our intelligence assured us the Americans could barely produce enough armor for their own forces. Yet here they are, equipping our enemies with hundreds of vehicles while simultaneously preparing for invasions in Africa and Europe. Either our intelligence is catastrophically wrong, or we have underestimated our enemy beyond all measure." The journey from confidence to comprehension intensified through prisoner accounts that reached German forces through various channels. Obergrenadier Vera Schmidt, captured with the Africa Corps in Tunisia in May 1943, was being transported between prisoner of war camps in American facilities when his train made a scheduled stop near the Boeing plant in Wichita, Kansas. Through the windows of the passenger car, not a cattle wagon, but a standard railroad coach, Schmidt witnessed aircraft production that rendered his earlier assumptions about American industrial capacity meaningless. "They are building bombers faster than we can shoot them down," he wrote in a letter to his family 3 months later. "I watched through the window as complete aircraft rolled from assembly buildings every hour. Not every day, every hour. The workers moved with the precision of machines, but their facilities, their equipment, their raw materials seemed unlimited. At Messerschmitt, we celebrated when we completed 20 aircraft in a month. Here they complete 20 aircraft while I write this letter." But the most devastating revelations would come to those German prisoners who witnessed American tank production firsthand. The Geneva Convention prohibited using prisoners for direct military production, but maintenance work, transportation, and general factory labor were permitted. Through these assignments, thousands of German tank crews would observe the industrial process that was creating their defeat. The Detroit tank arsenal became the epicenter of this psychological demolition. Built in just 8 months on 113 acres of Michigan farmland, this single facility embodied everything German industry could never achieve under wartime conditions. The main building stretched 5 city blocks in length and 2 blocks in width, protected by 3-foot-thick concrete walls designed to withstand the heaviest bombing raids German technology could deliver. Panzer Obergrenadier Ernst Weber, captured during the Battle of Tunisia in May 1943, was assigned to unload raw materials at the Detroit Arsenal in September of that year. His letters home, carefully screened by American censors but never suppressed, revealed the systematic destruction of German technological confidence. "The Americans waste more steel in a single day than our entire Panzer production uses in a week," Weber wrote to his brother Hans. "I watched them discard sheets of armor plating because of minor imperfections that our engineers would have considered acceptable. They melted down completed tank hulls because the paint was applied incorrectly. This is not the behavior of a nation struggling to produce war materials. This is the casual abundance of unlimited resources." Weber's work at the Detroit Arsenal provided access to production statistics that German intelligence would have dismissed as impossible. Chrysler Corporation was producing Sherman tanks at rates exceeding combined German tank output. In December 1942, Detroit Arsenal alone delivered 896 completed Sherman tanks, surpassing Germany's total tank production for the entire fourth quarter. The scale became apparent through mundane details prisoners recorded. Feldwebel Gustav Richter, working at Pressed Steel Car Company in Pennsylvania, documented American attitudes toward equipment that would have been irreplaceable in Germany. "Today I watched a worker discard a machine gun because barrel alignment was slightly off," Richter wrote in November 1943. "In Germany, our armorers would have spent days correcting such a flaw. Here, the supervisor ordered a replacement from the warehouse where hundreds waited on shelves. The foreman explained that retooling the defective weapon would cost more in labor than manufacturing a new one." At the Fisher Tank Arsenal in Grand Blanc, Michigan, Stabsfeldwebel Johann Kruger observed production techniques that revolutionized his understanding of industrial capacity. "They build tanks the way we build bicycles," Kruger wrote in a technical report. "Each component is manufactured separately by specialized machines, then assembled by workers who perform one specific task repeatedly. A German tank requires craftsmen who understand the entire vehicle. An American tank is assembled by hundreds of specialists who know their single operation perfectly. The German method produces superior individual tanks. The American method produces vastly superior numbers." Kruger identified the fundamental difference. German production emphasized engineering perfection, producing Tiger tanks requiring 14 days of assembly time per unit. American production emphasized efficiency and standardization, creating Sherman tanks manufactured in 8 hours using automobile assembly line techniques. More shocking still was the discovery that American tank production represented only a fraction of the nation's industrial capacity. Prisoners working at Ford's River Rouge complex observed simultaneous production of aircraft engines, jeeps, tank destroyers, and naval equipment using identical assembly techniques. Germany concentrated its entire war economy on military production at civilian expense. America operated military production alongside continuing civilian manufacturing, suggesting industrial capacity so vast that total mobilization was unnecessary. Hauptfeldwebel Wilhelm Becker, captured with the 21st Panzer Division in Normandy, worked at the Chrysler Dodge plant in Detroit throughout the summer of 1944. His observations of American production methods revealed capabilities that exceeded German strategic planning assumptions by orders of magnitude. "They operate 3 complete shifts, 24 hours daily, 7 days weekly," Becker documented in his prisoner correspondence. "The night shift produces as many tanks as the day shift. The weekend shift maintains full production. German factories operate single shifts because we lack sufficient skilled workers, raw materials, and electrical power. American factories operate continuous shifts because they have unlimited access to all 3 resources." The strategic implications became clear through comparative analysis. The United States operated 11 major tank production facilities across multiple states, distributing manufacturing to reduce bombing vulnerability. Germany concentrated production in Ruhr Valley factories, creating obvious targets for Allied bombers. American production benefited from standardization, eliminating German complexity. Sherman components were identical regardless of factory origin. German tanks incorporated factory-specific modifications, creating logistical nightmares when facilities were damaged. Psychological impact manifested in prisoner correspondence. Letters reflected growing awareness that German victory had become mathematically impossible. Obergrenadier Heinrich Sherman, working at the Lima Locomotive Works in Ohio, wrote to his father in December 1943. "Papa, you asked whether American tanks are inferior to our Panzers. In direct combat, yes, our Tigers and Panthers are superior, but they build 50 Sherman tanks for every Tiger we produce. They replace destroyed tanks within days. Our replacements require months. They fight with mass production. We fight with superior engineering. Mass production is winning." The industrial methods prisoners observed revealed systematic advantages that compounded over time. American factories incorporated continuous improvement processes that increased efficiency without reducing quality. The Detroit Arsenal reduced Sherman tank assembly time from 24 hours in January 1943 to 8 hours in December 1943, while simultaneously improving reliability and adding protective features. German factories struggled to maintain production schedules as raw material shortages and bombing raids disrupted operations. Quality control procedures at American facilities astounded German prisoners accustomed to resource constraints that made perfectionism impossible. At the American Locomotive Company plant in Schenectady, New York, Obergefreiter Rudolf Hoffmann observed testing procedures that would have been considered wasteful luxury in German factories. "They test every tank extensively before delivery," Hoffmann documented. "Each vehicle drives 50 kilometers on test tracks, fires 100 practice rounds, operates all systems under load conditions. Tanks that fail any test are returned for complete rebuild. In Germany, we deliver tanks that pass basic functionality checks because extensive testing consumes time and resources we cannot spare. American testing ensures reliability. German testing ensures minimal acceptability." The testing procedures Hoffmann observed reflected production philosophies that prioritized long-term effectiveness over short-term quantity. American tanks underwent reliability verification that reduced field breakdowns and maintenance requirements. German tanks entered service with known defects because correction would delay delivery schedules that strategic necessity demanded. The result was American armor that operated at higher availability rates despite facing heavier combat usage than German equipment. Seasonal production patterns revealed additional advantages that American industry enjoyed over German competitors. Winter weather that severely limited German manufacturing had minimal impact on American facilities equipped with reliable heating systems and electrical power. Spring flooding that disrupted German transportation networks had no effect on American supply chains protected by redundant railroad systems and improved highways. Summer heat that reduced German worker productivity was offset by air conditioning systems that maintained comfortable working conditions in American factories. The geographic distribution of American tank production astounded prisoners who understood the vulnerability of German industrial concentration. Sherman tanks were manufactured simultaneously in Michigan, Ohio, Illinois, Pennsylvania, and California, ensuring that bombing raids could never eliminate American production capacity entirely. Even if multiple facilities were destroyed, remaining plants could increase output to compensate for temporary losses. German prisoners working at subcontractor facilities discovered the depth of American industrial integration that made such production levels possible. At Baldwin Locomotive Works in Philadelphia, Stabsfeldwebels Max Weber observed the manufacturing process for Sherman tank transmissions and final drive assemblies. The complexity of the supply chain revealed industrial capacity that dwarfed German capabilities. "This single factory produces only transmission components," Weber documented. "Yet its monthly output exceeds the total production of our main tank factory at Kassel. The transmission components travel by railroad to 11 different assembly plants where complete tanks are built. Each assembly plant receives components from dozens of specialized suppliers. The coordination required exceeds anything German industry has achieved." Weber's observation identified the systematic advantages of American industrial organization. Specialized component manufacturers could optimize production processes for specific parts, achieving efficiency levels impossible in integrated factories that produced complete vehicles. The transportation infrastructure enabled rapid distribution of components across continental distances without scheduled disruptions. Communication systems coordinated production schedules between hundreds of suppliers and manufacturers with precision that German industry could never match given wartime conditions. The financial resources supporting American tank production shocked prisoners who understood the economic constraints that limited German manufacturing. At the Press Steel Car Company, Unterscharführer Franz Schulze observed accounting procedures that revealed spending levels beyond German comprehension. They purchased raw materials without regard for cost. Schultz wrote to his family in January 1944. Today, I watched supervisors reject an entire shipment of steel plates because the supplier delivered materials 2 days behind schedule. The rejected steel was worth more than our entire village earns in a year. Yet, they ordered replacement materials without discussion. When I asked about the rejected steel, the foreman explained it would be sold to civilian manufacturers at reduced prices because military schedules take priority over profit considerations. Schultz's observation revealed the economic foundation that enabled American industrial superiority. Military production operated with unlimited financial support that eliminated cost constraints imposed on German manufacturers. Raw materials were available in any quantity at any price because the government provided funding without limitation. German manufacturers operated under strict budget controls that required choosing between quality and quantity, between current production and future capacity, between military needs and civilian requirements. The labor force supporting American tank production included categories of workers that German ideology excluded from military manufacturing. At the Chrysler Detroit Arsenal, Obergrenadier Otto Brenner observed production teams that included women welders, elderly machinists, and minority assembly workers performing skilled tasks that German policy reserved for young German males. American women operate welding equipment with skill equal to our best craftsmen, Brenner documented. Workers assemble complex transmission components requiring precision that our engineers demand. Elderly men supervise production processes with authority our factory managers possess. They utilize their entire population for war production. We utilize only approved categories of workers, reducing our available labor force by more than half. Brenner's analysis identified demographic advantages that multiplied American industrial capacity beyond simple factory comparisons. The United States drew skilled workers from the entire adult population regardless of gender, race, or age, effectively doubling the available labor pool compared to German policies that restricted military production participation. Training programs converted civilian workers to military production specialists within months, providing flexibility that German apprenticeship systems required years to achieve. The technological sophistication of American manufacturing equipment surprised prisoners who expected to find crude mass production facilities. At the Fischer Tank Arsenal, Hauptgefreiter Ludwig Meyer observed machine tools that exceeded German industrial capabilities in precision, speed, and reliability. Their milling machines operate at speeds we considered impossible, Meyer documented in technical reports that American officers encouraged him to compile. The cutting tools maintain precision through thousands of operations that would require frequent replacement in German factories. The machines operate continuously without adjustment or maintenance that German equipment requires hourly. They achieve mass production without sacrificing precision manufacturing. Meyer's technical analysis revealed systematic advantages in machine tool technology that enabled American production superiority. American cutting tools incorporated metallurgy advances that German industry had not achieved, allowing higher operating speeds without precision loss. Lubrication systems provided continuous component protection that extended equipment life beyond German experience. Electrical controls offered precision adjustment capabilities that German mechanical systems could not match. The maintenance procedures at American facilities contrasted sharply with German practices that reflected resource scarcity. At the American Locomotive Company, Obergrenadier Hans Neumann observed equipment maintenance that prioritized prevention over repair, reflecting resource abundance rather than conservation necessity. They replace machine components before failure occurs, Neumann documented. Cutting tools are discarded after specific usage periods regardless of apparent condition. Lubricants are changed on fixed schedules rather than when contamination becomes visible. Electrical components are tested and replaced preventively rather than reactively. This maintenance philosophy keeps equipment operating at peak efficiency, but consumes resources at rates German industry cannot afford. Newman's observations revealed the economic foundation that enabled American industrial reliability. Preventive maintenance required higher parts consumption and labor investment than reactive maintenance, but eliminated production disruptions caused by equipment failures. American industry could afford preventive maintenance because resource abundance made efficiency more important than conservation. German industry practiced reactive maintenance because resource scarcity made conservation more important than efficiency. The quality assurance procedures at American tank factories astounded prisoners accustomed to German practices that balanced quality against production urgency. At the Detroit Tank Arsenal, Feldwebel Karl Hoffmann observed testing protocols that ensured Sherman tank reliability through procedures German factories could never implement given production pressures. Each completed tank undergoes 100 hours of operational testing before delivery, Hoffmann documented. Engines are tested under full load conditions. Transmissions are operated through complete gear ranges. Weapon systems are fired and calibrated precisely. Tanks that fail any test are completely rebuilt rather than repaired minimally. They deliver perfect tanks slowly rather than adequate tanks quickly. Hoffmann's analysis identified philosophical differences that explained American equipment reliability advantages. German factories delivered tanks that met minimum acceptance standards because production schedules demanded maximum output regardless of quality variations. American factories delivered tanks that met optimal performance standards because resource abundance made quality more important than speed. The result was American armor that required less field maintenance and achieved higher operational availability than German equipment despite facing comparable combat conditions. The logistics systems supporting American tank production revealed organizational capabilities that German prisoners found difficult to comprehend. At the Lima Locomotive Works, Stabsfeldwebel Wilhelm Kramer observed supply chain management that coordinated thousands of suppliers across continental distances with precision that exceeded German military logistics capabilities. Raw materials arrive exactly when needed, not early, not late, Kramer documented. Railroad schedules are maintained regardless of weather conditions. Truck transportation provides backup delivery when railroad capacity is insufficient. Warehouse systems track inventory levels automatically and trigger replacement orders before shortages occur. The coordination required exceeds anything our Wehrmacht logistics achieved even in peacetime. Kramer's observations revealed systematic advantages in transportation and communication infrastructure that enabled American industrial efficiency. Railroad networks provided redundant routing options that eliminated schedule disruptions caused by mechanical failures or weather conditions. Highway systems offered alternative transportation methods when railroad capacity proved insufficient. Telegraph and telephone systems enabled real-time coordination between suppliers, manufacturers, and customers across thousands of miles. Prisoner calculations revealed the mathematical impossibility of German victory. By early 1944, German prisoners working in American factories had compiled statistics showing production ratios that made defeat inevitable. Hauptfeldwebel Richard Steiner, working at multiple facilities, compiled comprehensive data. American tank production in 1943 exceeded 40,000 units. German production totaled 6,000. American advantages approached 7:1 ratios, increasing monthly as their facilities expand while ours suffer bombing damage. Steiner's calculations incorporated production trend analysis that projected future capabilities based on observed capacity expansion. American factories were adding production lines, installing improved equipment, and training additional workers continuously throughout 1943 and 1944. German factories were losing production lines to bombing raids, operating with obsolete equipment, and losing trained workers to military service requirements. The cumulative psychological impact of these observations produced what American prison camp administrators termed industrial demoralization syndrome among German tank crews. Prisoners who had entered American captivity believing in German technological superiority gradually accepted American industrial supremacy through daily exposure to production capabilities that exceeded German achievements by orders of magnitude. By late 1944, German prisoner correspondence reflected complete acceptance of American victory as inevitable based on production mathematics rather than battlefield tactics. Letters from prisoners to families in Germany began including detailed explanations of American industrial methods and suggestions for post-war German industrial reconstruction based on observed American practices. Obergrenadier Johann Bauer wrote to his father in December 1944, "Germany cannot win this war through superior technology when America produces 10 times more inferior technology. Quality cannot overcome quantity when the quantity difference becomes overwhelming. We must prepare for defeat and study American methods for our eventual reconstruction." The transformation was so complete that American prison camp administrators began using German prisoners as technical consultants in industrial efficiency studies. Prisoners who had initially viewed their assignments as forced labor gradually became voluntary students of American manufacturing techniques, compiling detailed reports on production methods they intended to implement in post-war Germany. The most profound psychological impact came from prisoner calculations of battlefield mathematics based on production statistics they observed. Stabsfeldwebels Ernst Müller, working at the Pressed Steel Car Company, compiled tank replacement ratios that demonstrated the futility of German tactical victories given American production advantages. Every German tank destroyed represents 6 months of irreplaceable production, Müller calculated in early 1945. Every American tank destroyed represents 8 hours of easily replaced production. German tank crews can achieve 5:1 kill ratios and still lose the war because American replacement rates exceed German replacement capabilities by factors that tactical skill cannot overcome. Müller's mathematical analysis revealed the strategic reality that German prisoners understood long before German military leadership accepted defeat as inevitable. American industrial capacity had created a military situation where German tactical superiority became strategically irrelevant because material replacement rates favored American forces regardless of battlefield outcomes. The educational programs accelerated prisoner transformation from enemies to students of democratic industrial methods. By early 1945, over 15,000 German tank crew prisoners were enrolled in technical courses taught by American factory supervisors. Programs covered production management, quality control, labor relations, supply chain coordination, and financial planning. Prisoners intended to apply these techniques in post-war German industrial reconstruction. German soldiers were learning American methods to rebuild the industry that American bombing had destroyed. The most detailed analysis came from a collaborative study by 12 German prisoners working at different facilities throughout 1944. Their combined report provided comprehensive documentation of capabilities German leadership had never assessed. American tank production operates at 30% of theoretical capacity, the study concluded. Current output could be tripled without constructing additional factories. The production levels that exceed German capabilities by 7:1 represent casual effort rather than maximum mobilization. This revealed the most devastating aspect. American production overwhelming German capacity represented normal operations, not emergency mobilization. American industry was defeating German industry while maintaining substantial reserve capacity. The prisoner education programs achieved results that exceeded American expectations. German prisoners who had entered captivity as committed National Socialists became advocates for democratic industrial methods and market economy principles. They understood that American production superiority resulted from economic freedom rather than government compulsion, from worker incentives rather than forced labor, from competitive efficiency rather than bureaucratic planning. By war's end in May 1945, German tank crew prisoners had compiled the most comprehensive analysis of American industrial capacity produced during the war years. Their reports, based on direct observation rather than intelligence estimates, documented production capabilities that German strategic planning had never recognized as possible. Former prisoners became industrial consultants, factory managers, and technical instructors, applying American production techniques to German reconstruction. Their influence shaped the German economic miracle of the 1950s through systematic application of mass production methods, quality control procedures, and supply chain management learned during imprisonment. Hauptfeldwebel Wilhelm Kramer, who observed supply chain management at Lima Locomotive Works, became Volkswagen's logistics director. His American coordination methods enabled German automobile production that eventually competed successfully internationally. Stabsfeldwebel Ernst Müller, who calculated production mathematics at Pressed Steel Car Company, became a consultant for German steel industry reconstruction. His efficiency analysis helped German steel production exceed pre-war capabilities within a decade. The transformation was complete. German tank crews who had entered captivity believing in technological superiority gradually accepted American industrial supremacy. They understood that democratic capitalism produced superior abundance than totalitarian socialism and became advocates for free market economics and international cooperation. 20 years after the war, surviving German tank crew prisoners held a reunion in Detroit, Michigan, returning to the facilities where they had learned the principles that enabled Germany's post-war economic recovery. Former prisoners brought their families to demonstrate the American methods that had overwhelmed German military technology and subsequently enabled German industrial reconstruction. Former Obergrenadier Klaus Müller, who had written those desperate words in his notebook during the Sicily campaign, spoke at the reunion dinner held at the Detroit Arsenal. "We came to America as prisoners of war, believing German technology was superior to American mass production," Müller reflected. "We learned that quantity has a quality of its own when advantages become overwhelming. American industry taught us that democratic freedom produces greater material abundance than totalitarian control, that worker incentives generate higher productivity than forced labor, that competitive markets create more efficient resource allocation than government planning." The mathematical reality was undeniable. American industry had produced 49,324 Sherman tanks during World War II, compared to Germany's total production of approximately 25,000 tanks of all types. The production ratio exceeded 2:1 for total numbers and approached 7:1 when comparing equivalent medium tanks. More significantly, American tank production represented approximately 25% of total American armored vehicle production. During the war years, the United States simultaneously produced thousands of tank destroyers, self-propelled artillery, armored cars, and specialized vehicles while maintaining civilian automobile production and supporting Allied nations through Lend-Lease programs. German prisoners who witnessed American industrial capacity understood that they had encountered a production system that could not be defeated through military action because it operated with resource abundance, technological superiority, organizational efficiency, and economic freedom that totalitarian systems could never match. The story of German tank crew prisoners in American factories represents the ultimate triumph of democratic industrial capitalism over fascist military technology. Superior German tank design could not overcome American production superiority when quantity advantages reached levels that made quality differences strategically irrelevant. American Sherman tanks overwhelmed German Panzers not through superior individual performance, but through superior industrial systems that produced overwhelming numerical advantages while maintaining adequate technical quality for battlefield requirements. The lesson learned by German prisoners was clear. Democratic freedom creates industrial capacity that totalitarian control cannot match. In the end, America's 49,324 Sherman tanks represented more than military production statistics. They represented the triumph of free market democracy over fascist totalitarianism, of competitive efficiency over government compulsion, of worker incentives over forced labor, of abundant resources over scarcity economics. German tank crews who experienced American industrial might discovered that true power came not from superior individual weapons, but from superior industrial systems that could produce adequate weapons in quantities that made individual superiority irrelevant. They learned that freedom produced abundance, that competition created efficiency, and that democracy generated material capabilities that dictatorship could never equal. The Sherman tanks that overwhelmed German resistance were symbols of American industrial democracy at peak performance, demonstrating to the world that free peoples could outproduce, outfight, and outlast any totalitarian challenger when their survival and freedom were at stake. The lesson learned by German prisoners became the foundation for post-war German democracy and the cornerstone of the Atlantic alliance that secured Western freedom throughout the Cold War.